Hello and welcome to the Tank Club. I've recently been exploring a range of MMO games, both new and old, and the most recent game on my list has been Final Fantasy XIV. Now this is a pretty old MMORPG at this point, but it's highly rated and one of the most popular played MMOs right now. Some people in my community told me to try it out, with one of the main points convincing me was that it is the best and most fun MMORPG to play as a tank. So these are my first impressions of Final Fantasy XIV, coming especially from a tank perspective. So firstly, we're going to look at the story. I'm actually quite a fan of story content when it comes to MMO and RPG games, even though I like to play as a tank. The start of the game is a big impact story cutscene, which is one of the things that they do well in this game. The cutscenes are always really good. I especially enjoy going into new dungeons or raids, and the cutscenes you get really set the tone for what you're about to dive into. When it comes to the actual story in this game, however, it is severely underwhelming. As a brand new player on the base game story, which you are forced to play through, it's honestly one of the worst MMO experiences I have ever had to endure. There's no action, no combat, no energy to the story. It's just endless hours of reading and running around while you're sent on a wild goose chase around the map with no mounts. When I compare it to things like The Elder Scrolls Oblivion being one of my favourite games of all time, the main story quest in that game threw me straight into the action, and you couldn't be any further away from that in Final Fantasy XIV. The tone of the game doesn't seem right. You go from doing like a raid and killing a primal boss, saving the world on the main story quest, and then doing a quest where you're a bouncer at a tavern. Afterwards, you have a chain of about 10 quests when you have to travel miles and miles and miles around the map making wine. These should not be forced main story quests in my opinion. It's really infuriating. This is made even worse by the fact that you don't unlock a mount for a really long time, so you rely on the shrines to teleport around, of which there are very few in good locations out in the wilderness where all the quests are located, so you just have to run. Another reason why the story is so bad at this stage is because there's almost no voiceover whatsoever. This isn't something that I ever realised I was bothered about until playing this game. Voiceover just appears in random main story quests, but it's hard to enjoy a main quest when you have zero voiceover. You don't get to hear the tone, the accent, the emotion, or build a bond with the various characters that you meet along the way. The amount of text that you need to read through is excessive and not enjoyable at all. People tell me that things improve with later expansions, so I'll push through and look forward to that. And I'm really looking forward to getting involved in the group content, so it's worth grinding out the quests to get to that point. I really feel like a lot of people will just quit after a few hours of playing because of how bland the story is, and just by how much of it you have to actually do. Next, we're going to look at like the leveling, and leveling is extremely fast in Final Fantasy XIV. I've gone into a new server, and there are bonuses to help new players with huge XP boosts. The Final Fantasy website claims experience a new generation of MMORPG where grinding is kept to a minimum so you can enjoy more immediate results. That's what the phrase that you use on the website. And this is great because it took very little time to reach level 50. I've barely even tried, and it's just happened by doing the main quests and the job quests. The problem with all of this increased experience is the fact that I'm level 50, but I actually do have a huge grind ahead, like a massive grind, because I'm on the main story quest and it's a level 20 quest and I'm level 50. And you actually have about 60 plus hours of main story quest grind to do before you can do anything else, before you unlock any content. It's really misleading. On the plus side, the increased XP means I've been able to switch class once I've figured out how to do that, and I've been able to level up additional jobs and classes during the main quest line so I don't waste any of my XP gains. The pace of the game is good in terms of your character progression. I recently tried out World of Warcraft and it was an overwhelming experience where you gain new abilities so extremely quickly that it's just too much to handle. With Final Fantasy XIV, you slowly obtain more and more abilities, some of which require you to complete job quests, and this method seems to work really well to help you get used to the abilities, understand how they work, and then what they do, and figure out how you want to lay out your hotkeys. So obviously I started out with my class and then I progressed onto a paladin, so there wasn't that many skills to unlock, and then I slowly grew and unlocked more and more. I really like the progressive dungeons and raids that you unlock. It gives you a chance to kind of jump into some of the content and begin learning how to perform your role. It's not too difficult, and your group members also get scaled down in level, so you don't breeze through it all too easily. I'm a big fan of even the base game and old original content still having some relevancy. I like to work my way from the easy older content where I can build experience, understanding of combat and base mechanics, get used to my rotation where my skills are, and then move on to progressively newer and more difficult content, which I then don't struggle with because of the pace of the progression building me up to the harder content. Going back to World of Warcraft again, this is something they don't do in that game, and you basically do the newest content or nothing. And it's really not that easy to jump into WoW dungeons with zero knowledge, especially as a tank, but this is possible in Final Fantasy. Another nice touch is the tank training. So there are a number of lessons where they tell you how to do some basic tank things. They send you into an instance to do them. Once you complete the task, you pass and move on to the next task. It's a really nice touch that actually gives some real basic education and understanding. I've never actually seen other games do this, but it's something I would like to see more MMO games do, to at least set up tanks with some basic knowledge that they need to do to perform their base duties of tanking, and making them do this before they can select the tank role for group content. Looking at the group content and combat and tanking, so I'm a tank main, which means I thrive on doing group content. The only thing that causes me a problem is that my tank stance turns off when I enter dungeons each time I get scaled down in level, and this is caused by the issues we mentioned already where I'm drastically out leveling the main quest. Luckily my group members have kindly reminded me about this when I forgot, and it's been good to see no one getting annoyed or kicking me from the group, and just a little message to remind me to turn my tank stance on. So I love the intros to the dungeons and raids with the cutscenes as I mentioned before. The dungeon content is really fun. At this stage it's not been overly complicated, and I've quickly developed my understanding to the point where I kind of run into ad pulls, I aggro everything, then I run to the next ads, stack it all up, pop my mitigation, hit my AoEs to maintain threat. Keeping aggro of enemies is really easy, so long as you have your tank stance turned on. It's pretty hard to actually lose aggro of enemies. The threat system is much better than other MMO games I've played, and it's really beginner friendly, but it also makes dungeons much more interesting as you can aggro and then run to pull more enemies, and more often than not they remain aggro to you, so it doesn't require you to be dishing out intense amounts of damage output constantly to keep enemies on you. Early game you have very few abilities, and this is actually a good thing. I pull ads together and then I just spin around doing my one AoE skill. On bosses I have a 2 to 3 button combo. In between those I have 2 solid mitigation skills which I try to save for moments where I'm taking a lot of damage. And the combat system is good, and I enjoy the basic rotation at the start, and then they get progressively more detailed but without being too overwhelming. Mechanics are fairly clear for the most part. Turning enemies away from the group to prevent them from being hit by bosses is essential. You have a large amount of AoEs and conal attacks which you need to pay attention to see whether you need to move out or stay, or you can step to the side. Then you have the pretty clear tank busters as well, where you get a thing above your character, you pop some mitigation to help the healer out so they can keep you alive. Raids are actually really exciting as well. So far these have been basically one arena with one boss. They haven't been too hard, but once I level up further I'll unlock the hardcore versions of some of the raids, which I'm excited to do. I can see some of these being really challenging and fun later in the game, and the same with the dungeons. I did find a quest that wasn't attached to the main story which unlocked a level 50 dungeon, and this was a great chance to experience some content for the first time that was actually matched to my level. I could definitely see a step up in the difficulty, but I had developed enough experience from the previous encounters and the previous dungeons to enjoy this and clear successfully with very little trouble. So just in conclusion on my first impressions, I can see this being a hard game for some people to get into. I found it difficult to be engaged by the super long main story quest. The combat and the group content easily makes up for it however, and it's really worth powering through the quests to experience the rest of the game's content. Once I started skipping a lot of the pointless quests and leveling new jobs and focusing on unlocking new dungeons, the amount I was enjoying playing really increased a lot. This is one of the most popular MMO games in the world, and there has to be a reason for that. The community are very passionate about the game, and the people I've bumped into both in the game and on my live streams, the community is one of the more welcoming and helpful communities I've seen in the MMO sector. So I'm going to keep playing and developing my tanking in Final Fantasy, and I'll look forward to doing a full review of the game in the future once I've fully leveled my character and got a bit deeper into the expansions and the mid to end game scene. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.